The sun had barely risen over the small military outpost nestled on the edge of the Oregon plains. Dust swirled across the tarmac as the morning chill bit through the thin layers of uniform. The base was quiet, save for the distant hum of generators and the occasional clank of tools from the maintenance hangar. For most of the soldiers stationed here, mornings were routine, but for Lieutenant Riley Morgan, today felt different. Riley wasn't like the others. At 28, she was younger than most of the officers, smaller than some of the enlisted men, and she carried herself with a quiet intensity that some mistook for meekness. Today, she crouched beside a drone parked on the cracked concrete, a screwdriver in her hand studying the frayed wires that connected its antenna to the central system. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and smudges of grease streaked across her forehead and uniform. To anyone watching, she might have seemed out of place. A woman fiddling with a piece of machinery most of the men didn't even want to touch. "Need some help there, drone girl?" The voice came from across the tarmac, dripping with mockery. Sergeant Carter, a broad-shouldered man with a reputation for bullying the new recruits, leaned against the hood of a jeep, arms crossed. Behind him, a couple of other soldiers snickered, their faces a mix of curiosity and amusement. Riley didn't look up. She had learned early in her career that ignoring insults often frustrated people more than responding. "I've got it," she said calmly, twisting a screw. "Just need a few more minutes." Minutes stretched into an eternity as Carter stomped closer, his boots kicking up dust. "Minutes? For a drone? It's not like it's a tank. Maybe we should send someone who actually knows what they're doing." His grin was cruel. "Or are you just here to make the coffee?" Riley paused, her fingers tightening around the screwdriver. She knew the drill. She'd faced mockery before in other bases and other jobs, even back home. People saw her size, her gender, her quiet demeanor, and assumed she was weak. But she had a reputation in the Air Force that few knew. She wasn't just a technician. She had flown countless missions, repaired drones in hostile territories, and saved lives under fire. But no one here knew that. "Not yet, I don't need help," she said, voice low but steady. "I'll get it done." Carter laughed, loud enough that it carried across the tarmac. "Right. We'll see how long it takes the little lady to fix this thing." He gestured to the others who joined in with their laughter. Riley felt the familiar sting of isolation, but she pushed it down. Anger, she had learned, was a tool, only if you used it wisely. She focused on the drone, her hands moving with precision. The antenna was delicate, wires entangled like vines. One wrong move and the drone would be useless for the day's reconnaissance mission. Sweat prickled at her temples as she worked. The morning grew warmer, and the sun rose higher, casting sharp shadows across the concrete. "Hey, maybe she's not just a coffee girl," muttered one of the newer recruits behind Carter. His voice was hesitant, uncertain. "I mean, she's been at it a while." Carter shot him a glare. "Don't start defending her. You'll regret it." Riley's jaw tightened. She didn't need anyone to defend her. She had survived worse than mockery. She had survived the desert heat of Afghanistan, hostile fire from drones she herself had repaired under pressure, and the judgment of officers who thought she didn't belong. And she would survive this too. Finally, with a quiet click, the antenna locked into place. Riley straightened, brushing the dust from her uniform. The drone's systems came online, lights blinking as it completed its startup sequence. She stepped back, satisfied. "That's it," she said. "It's ready." Carter walked over, arms folded, his smile now forced. "Huh, didn't think you had it in you." He glanced at the drone, then back at Riley. "Guess, good job, little lady." The words were reluctant, dripping with disbelief rather than praise. Riley said nothing. She didn't need validation from people who couldn't see her for who she truly was. Her focus was already on the next task, preparing the drone for the reconnaissance flight over the nearby forested area. As she wheeled the drone toward the launch pad, a vehicle rumbled onto the base. Riley noticed it immediately, the black SUV with tinted windows that rarely visited outposts like theirs. The doors opened and out stepped Colonel James Preston, a high-ranking officer whose presence could shift the mood of any base. He was known for his sharp mind, his intolerance for incompetence, and his reputation for recognizing talent where others overlooked it. "Lieutenant Morgan?" His voice was crisp, commanding attention. Riley straightened. "Yes, Colonel." He scanned the drone, then looked at her. His eyes narrowed slightly as though he was trying to place her face. Riley's pulse quickened. Something about him made her uneasy, but not because she was afraid. She had faced dangerous situations far more threatening than a moment of scrutiny. Still, there was a weight in his gaze, a sense that he was seeing something that others had missed. "Who fixed this?" he asked, glancing between her and the nearby soldiers. Carter's lips twitched as if he wanted to take credit. "I mean, the new lieutenant did a little work on it," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Preston's gaze returned to Riley, sharp and direct. "You? You repaired this entire system?" "Yes, sir," Riley said, keeping her voice steady though her heart raced. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Alone?" "Yes, sir." There was a pause heavy with tension. The other soldiers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that the colonel was not impressed with the mockery that had filled the morning. Preston stepped closer to the drone, crouching slightly to inspect it. He touched the antenna, checking the wiring with a careful eye. "This isn't just functional," he said slowly. "This is precise work. Meticulous. Very few technicians could achieve this under normal circumstances, let alone under time pressure." Riley swallowed, sensing that this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when someone who mattered would finally see her for her skills. Preston straightened and looked her directly in the eye. "Lieutenant Morgan, you weren't just fixing a drone. You were preparing for a mission that could save lives. Tell me, have you ever deployed with this unit before?" The question hung in the air, charged with suspicion. She hesitated, knowing the moment required honesty but also calculation. "No, sir. I'm new to this base, but I've been deployed multiple times overseas. I've repaired drones and other reconnaissance systems under fire. Lives depended on me." For a fraction of a second, Preston's expression didn't change. Then a faint flicker of recognition crossed his face. He leaned back slightly, adjusting his glasses. Wait. Riley Morgan?" "Yes, sir," she replied, bracing herself. He froze, blinking as if confirming what he already suspected. His voice lowered, almost to himself. "The Riley Morgan?" The other soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Carter's smirk faltered. The nickname Drone Girl suddenly seemed insignificant in the presence of someone who had clearly done more than anyone on this base realized. Preston finally turned back to her, this time with a mixture of astonishment and respect. "I didn't expect—" "I had no idea. You're the Riley Morgan who led the tech unit during Operation Falcon Strike, the one who saved 30 troops when the forward base lost communications." Riley kept her posture neutral, but inside, a small spark of vindication flickered. The sneers, the mockery, the constant doubt. It all melted away under Preston's recognition. She had survived, endured, and now, finally, someone who mattered understood who she really was. Carter's jaw tightened, his embarrassment barely hidden. The other soldiers looked at her differently now, the earlier laughter dying in the dusty morning air. Riley felt a wave of quiet satisfaction. This was only the beginning, she knew. But for the first time in a long time, the scales of judgment had begun to tip in her favor. As the drone's lights blinked softly in the morning sun, Riley straightened her shoulders and met Colonel Preston's gaze. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready. Because she wasn't just a soldier fixing drones. She was Riley Morgan, and the world was about to remember it. The following days on the base carried a strange energy. Riley walked through the barracks with the usual hum of activity surrounding her, but the air had shifted. Where once her name was met with derision or silence, now there were whispers, cautious, curious, tinged with respect. Some of the younger recruits peeked at her as she passed, eyes wide, as if seeing a new side of a woman they had previously dismissed. Even Sergeant Carter seemed off balance, his once confident swagger faltering under the invisible weight of her reputation. But Riley didn't bask in the attention. She had learned long ago that respect earned under observation was fleeting. Real respect came from performance under pressure, and nothing on this base had truly tested her yet. The call came during a routine briefing. Colonel Preston entered the room with a stack of mission files in his hands, the kind of files that made the room feel colder, heavier, more serious. The soldiers stiffened as he cleared his throat, eyes scanning the group with that same piercing gaze Riley had felt before. "Lieutenant Morgan," he said, stopping directly in front of her. "You fixed the drone system yesterday with remarkable precision. Impressive work. His words were formal but carried an undertone of challenge. "I have a situation that requires your immediate attention. A drone malfunction in the field, outside the base perimeter. The unit responsible has been unable to resolve it. Lives could be at risk if this isn't corrected within the next 6 hours." Riley's heart skipped a beat. 6 hours wasn't much time. The location was rugged, forested terrain that often interfered with drone signals. And the malfunction wasn't simple. From the report Preston handed her, it was a critical failure, one that had stumped even the most experienced technicians. "Yes, sir," she replied, steadying herself. Inside, though, adrenaline surged. This was her chance, not for glory, not for recognition, but to prove herself under pressure, the way she had so many times before. As she prepared her gear, Carter approached, his expression a mix of skepticism and thinly veiled irritation. "Going out there alone? Don't get yourself killed, drone girl." His words were sharp, meant to sting, but Riley didn't flinch. She had faced far worse than insults, and survival had always depended on keeping a clear head. "I'll be fine," she said simply. "Focus on keeping the base running while I handle this." The drive out to the malfunction site was tense. Riley's eyes scanned the rugged landscape as the Humvee bounced along the dirt roads. The forest stretched endlessly, dark and foreboding, with only narrow paths cutting through the dense trees. Signals from the drone flickered intermittently on her handheld monitor, a digital heartbeat that warned of danger with every glitch. When she arrived, the situation was worse than she had imagined. The drone's main antenna had been ripped during a previous emergency extraction. The internal wiring frayed, some circuits completely fried. The field team responsible looked at her nervously. Their frustration and exhaustion were clear. They had tried everything, even risking themselves in the forest to get the drone operational, only to fail. One of them, a young tech named Daniels, stepped forward. "We've been at it for hours. Nobody's been able to fix it. It's beyond us." Riley crouched beside the drone, examining the damage. Her hands moved automatically, trained by countless hours of field experience. She could see the misaligned circuits, the tiny breaks in the wires, the subtle signs of electrical strain that most would have overlooked. "You're underestimating it," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Then louder, to the team. "I can fix this, but I need space and focus. Step back." They hesitated, exchanging worried glances, but reluctantly obeyed. She opened the control panel, tools in hand, sweat beginning to prick at her brow despite the cool morning air. Every second counted. Every wrong move could mean mission failure, and potentially lives at risk. As Riley worked, the forest seemed to close in around her. Branches scratched against her uniform. Insects buzzed near her face and the wind shifted, carrying a distant echo of movement she didn't recognize. Her focus sharpened. She blocked out everything else, the doubts, the whispers of failure, even the lingering mockery from back at the base. There was only the drone, the mission, and her hands moving with unwavering precision. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Her fingers danced over circuits, repairing connections, replacing damaged components, rerouting power through alternate channels. Each adjustment brought the drone closer to life. The field team watched silently, a growing sense of awe building as the machine's systems slowly stabilized. Then, just as the sun began to dip behind the trees, there was a sudden snap, a branch breaking under unseen weight. Riley's heart leapt. She knew the forest could harbor danger beyond equipment failure, wildlife, treacherous terrain, or even human threats in these remote regions. Her instincts sharpened, honed by years in hostile environments. "Stay alert," she warned the team without looking up. "We're not done yet." Minutes later, a low hum began to emit from the drone. Lights blinked steadily, indicators returning to normal. Riley's hands hovered over the final connections, her breath steady but controlled. Then, with a soft click, the drone fully powered on, its cameras and sensors coming alive as if nothing had ever been wrong. Daniels let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. She actually did it. It's working. Riley allowed herself a brief smile but didn't relax completely. She had learned that danger often lingered even after success. But as she guided the drone into the air, watching it lift effortlessly above the forest canopy, a deep satisfaction settled over her. This was what she lived for. Moments where skill, courage, and determination intersected to make a difference. Then came the voice in her earpiece. "Colonel Preston, Lieutenant Morgan, status report," he said, calm but urgent. "Drone is operational," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite exhaustion.
"Mission critical systems restored. Ready for reconnaissance." There was a pause on the line, longer than usual. Then Preston's voice returned, this time with an edge she had never heard before. "I knew I recognized your name. You're more than the stories say, more than anyone here realizes."
Good work. Very good work. For a moment, Riley allowed herself to feel the weight of his words. She had spent years fighting to prove herself, enduring mockery, doubt, and the constant question of whether she truly belonged. And now, in this quiet forest with the drone hovering steadily above the trees, someone who mattered had acknowledged the truth. But victory didn't last long. As Riley prepared to return the drone to base, her monitor suddenly flickered. A warning signal flashed. Interference, strong enough to suggest intentional tampering. Someone had disrupted the drone's systems, possibly trying to sabotage the mission. Her pulse quickened. Whoever it was had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to undermine her success. Riley clenched her fists, a familiar fire igniting inside her. She had faced impossible odds before, hostile environments, malfunctioning equipment, enemy attacks, and she had survived. She would survive this too. And this time she would find out exactly who wanted to see her fail. The forest around her suddenly felt alive with tension. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound sharper. The peaceful reconnaissance mission had turned into a test of endurance, wits, and courage, and Riley Morgan was ready. For the first time, the field team realized that Drone Girl was not just a nickname. She was a force, someone who would not back down no matter the challenge. And somewhere in the distance, someone was about to regret underestimating her. The forest was alive with tension. Riley crouched behind a large oak, her eyes scanning the tree line while her hands worked quickly on the drone's emergency override. The interference signal pulsed steadily, strong enough to suggest that someone wasn't just experimenting. They were trying to end her mission. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but she didn't allow fear to take over. She had faced far worse situations. Hostile fire, ambushes, treacherous terrain. This was no different, just a new kind of threat. "Lieutenant Morgan," Daniel's voice trembled over the comms. "What's going on?" "The signal, it's coming from, I don't know, somewhere nearby." Riley didn't answer immediately. She needed eyes on the interference, needed to pinpoint it before panic spread. Her fingers danced across the controls, rerouting frequencies, adjusting the antenna's output. Then slowly she traced the source. A device hidden under a pile of brush, crude but effective, actively jamming the drone. "Got it," she said finally. "Someone planted a jammer. It's close. I can disable it, but I'll need cover." Daniels and the other field techs looked at each other nervously. They had trained for emergencies, but this was different. This wasn't just a technical problem. It was deliberate sabotage. "Cover you?" Daniels asked, voice cracking. "We're not combat soldiers." Riley's eyes narrowed. She understood their hesitation. But hesitation wasn't an option. "Then stay back and follow my instructions. Don't move unless I say so." With deliberate steps, she approached the device. The wind shifted and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Branches scratched against her helmet. Insects buzzed around her, and somewhere in the shadows a crow cawed. Every instinct screamed that she was being watched, but Riley had trained herself to trust logic over fear. Kneeling, she began disarming the jammer. It was intricate work, wires intertwined like a snake's coils, but her hands moved with precision, steady as if guided by muscle memory from years of field deployment. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't pause. One slip could destroy the drone or worse, expose the jammer to whoever had planted it. Then a twig snapped behind her. Her head whipped around. A shadow moved between the trees, tall, deliberate, observing. Riley's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't panic. She knew the forest. She knew cover. She had survived ambushes in Afghanistan, where any distraction could mean death. "You there," she called, voice steady but commanding. "Identify yourself!" The figure stepped closer, partially visible through the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. A man in civilian clothing, but with the air of someone used to military operations. He froze as Riley stood, placing herself between him and the jammer. "You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. "Step away from that device now." He smirked, a flash of arrogance that only fueled Riley's resolve. "And why would I do that, little lady?" His tone was mocking, designed to provoke. Riley's mind raced. She had trained for quick neutralizations, for disarming threats in seconds, but this was a situation where restraint mattered as much as action. One wrong move and it could escalate into injury. Or worse, he could trigger a failsafe she hadn't yet detected. "Because if you don't, lives will be at risk. And I will stop you," she said, her voice quiet but deadly firm. The man laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Lives, you mean like the last drone mission you nearly botched? I've been following the results of your miracle fixes. You're impressive for someone who was supposed to be just a tech, but impressive doesn't mean unstoppable." Riley's chest tightened. Here was the culmination of every insult she had ever endured. Every moment of doubt cast by people like Carter, now manifested in front of her, and yet she didn't falter. Her training took over. "Step back," she repeated, this time more forcefully. "I'm giving you one chance." He hesitated, and that hesitation was all she needed. With a swift motion, she grabbed the jammer, twisting and snapping the wires, rendering it useless. Sparks flew. The device fell to the forest floor with a metallic clatter. The interference on her monitor vanished instantly. The man's eyes widened in shock. You did it? Just like that?" Riley didn't answer. She kept her focus on him, chest heaving slightly, but her mind sharp and alert. She could feel the weight of the forest, the tension lingering in every shadow. "Who sent you?" she demanded. "Who wanted this drone down?" The man smirked again, but this time there was fear behind it. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Riley's gaze didn't waver. "Try me." For a moment's silence. Then reluctantly he muttered, "Carter. Sergeant Carter, he wants to make sure you fail. Everyone's watching. He doesn't think a woman can actually handle the field." Riley's stomach tightened. The name carried no shock, only a cold fury she had been holding back for days. Every insult, every snide remark, every moment he had tried to undermine her. It all made sense now. He had gone further than mockery. He had tried sabotage. "You're coming with me," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "And you're going to tell me everything about this plot. Every detail." The man hesitated, then nodded. Riley's instincts told her he would cooperate, and she wasn't going to give him a chance to change his mind. She secured him quickly, improvising restraints from the drone equipment cables. Back at the base, the drive was tense. Riley sat silently, eyes forward, mind racing. She didn't know how far Carter's plan had gone, how many people were involved, or how much damage he had already caused. But she knew one thing. She had proof now, and she had the upper hand. Colonel Preston was waiting when she arrived, hands folded, a calm but expectant look on his face. "Lieutenant Morgan," he said, scanning the restrained man. "Care to explain?" Riley's voice was steady, unwavering. "Sir, Sergeant Carter attempted to sabotage our drone mission. I discovered the jammer in the field and neutralized it. This man here was sent to interfere with critical operations, by Carter. Lives were at risk because of his actions." Preston's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with controlled anger. "Carter?" he repeated, incredulous. "The same man who mocked you on the tarmac?" "He actually—" "Yes, sir," Riley said, keeping her voice even, letting the weight of the truth settle in the room. "I have him admitting to it." There was silence for a moment. Then Preston exhaled a deep, measured breath and finally said, "Lieutenant Morgan, you didn't just fix a drone. You uncovered a plot that could have endangered this entire mission. You've done more than anyone could have asked. Well done." The other soldiers watched, some with awe, some with shame. Carter's arrogance, once unshakable, had crumbled completely. And Riley, quiet but resolute, felt a sense of vindication that went far deeper than mere acknowledgement. She had faced mockery, sabotage, and doubt, and had risen above it all. Yet as she looked at Carter being escorted to the disciplinary office, Riley knew this wasn't the end. There were still battles to fight, respect to earn, trust to rebuild, and a reputation to cement. And for the first time in her career, she felt that people were finally beginning to see her for who she really was. She glanced at Colonel Preston, who met her gaze with a mix of respect and quiet admiration. "Lieutenant Morgan," he said, "you've changed the way this base sees what's possible. That's no small feat." Riley allowed herself a small, tight smile. She had survived ridicule, sabotage, and underestimation, and now finally she had the recognition she deserved. But deep down she knew the true test, the one that would cement her place when was yet to come. Because someone like Riley Morgan never backed down. She didn't just survive adversity, she turned it into her weapon. And the world was about to learn that lesson in full. The base was quieter than usual the next morning. Riley walked through the tarmac, her boots clicking against the concrete with purposeful precision. For the first time in weeks, the sneers and whispers that had followed her seemed to have evaporated, replaced with a mix of curiosity, caution, and in some cases, genuine respect. But Riley knew better than to believe that respect came easily. She had earned it the hard way in the field under pressure, and in moments where failure could mean death. And today, the final test was coming. Colonel Preston summoned her to his office, a place where very few had the privilege to enter without a clear reason. His demeanor was calm, but the tension in the room was palpable. Riley stepped in and saluted sharply. "Lieutenant Morgan," Preston began, his voice steady. "What you accomplished yesterday went far beyond technical skill. You neutralized sabotage in real time, ensured mission success, and protected the lives of personnel in the field. That alone would warrant recognition." He paused, letting his gaze settle on her. "But there's more." Riley's heart quickened. She had a sense that whatever Preston was about to say would shift the balance of power on the base. "Sir?" Preston tapped the file on his desk. "After reviewing the events surrounding the drone malfunction and Sergeant Carter's involvement, it's clear that your work not only prevented potential disaster, but also exposed a culture of underestimation that's been tolerated here for far too long. You forced people to see what they ignored. Skill and courage don't come in a single package, and certainly not one defined by gender." Riley's lips pressed together. She had expected acknowledgement, maybe even commendation, but she hadn't anticipated the full weight of what he was about to propose. "You're being offered command of the drone operations team," Preston continued. "Effective immediately. You will oversee missions, training, and maintenance with full authority. The choice is yours. Will you accept it?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Riley felt the enormity of the offer. Command meant responsibility, visibility, and accountability. It meant standing at the center of operations, where every success and failure would reflect directly on her. But it also meant that her skills, her dedication, and her perseverance would finally be impossible to ignore. She straightened, meeting Preston's gaze with unwavering resolve. "Sir, I accept." Preston nodded, the faintest smile breaking across his face. "Good, I thought you might." Word spread quickly across the base. Where Riley had once been overlooked, mocked, or underestimated, she now held authority and earned respect. Some soldiers were hesitant at first, their pride bruised by her sudden rise. Carter, of course, fumed silently, his arrogance shattered by the undeniable proof of his own failure. But Riley didn't seek vengeance. She sought change. She reorganized teams, retrained personnel, and personally mentored younger technicians. She emphasized precision, courage, and teamwork. Slowly, the base's culture shifted. Soldiers who had doubted her before began to look at her not just as a leader, but as a standard to aspire to. Yet Riley's journey wasn't solely about professional recognition. She carried the memory of every challenge she had faced, the moments of mockery and doubt, and the shadow of sabotage that had threatened the mission. They fueled her determination to ensure no one else on her team would ever face the isolation or disbelief she had endured. Weeks later, a recognition ceremony was held on the base. The drone she had repaired, the one that had been sabotaged, was displayed prominently. Colonel Preston stepped forward, addressing the assembled personnel. "Today," he said, voice firm, "we honor Lieutenant Riley Morgan, not just for her skill, not just for her bravery, but for her unwavering commitment to excellence under pressure. She embodies the principle that talent and courage are what truly define a soldier." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling into a genuine, heartfelt recognition. Riley's eyes scanned the crowd. She saw faces she had once thought indifferent, even hostile, now filled with admiration. She saw the younger recruits inspired, and in that moment she understood that her fight had never been just for herself. It had been for every person who had been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. Carter stood at the edge of the group, silent and shamed, his attempts at undermining her fully exposed. He would face formal disciplinary action, but Riley didn't gloat. She had bigger priorities: her team, her missions, and the knowledge that she had changed the environment around her forever. As the ceremony ended, Riley walked back toward the drone operations center. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the base. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. Every challenge, every insult, every moment of doubt had led to this. She had faced sabotage, disbelief, and danger, and emerged stronger, not just surviving, but thriving. Colonel Preston caught up with her, his expression both serious and approving. "Morgan, I want you to know something," he said quietly. "The stories they told about you were just the beginning. Your actions here have changed perceptions across the entire command. People will remember this, and you will be the standard they measure others by." Riley nodded. She didn't need words of affirmation anymore. Her work, her courage, and her leadership had already spoken for her. As she looked out across the base, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The drone she had repaired, the sabotage she had neutralized, the team she now led, all of it stood as proof that determination, skill, and integrity could not be denied. And the twist of fate, the moment where disbelief turned into respect, was sweeter than any victory she could have imagined. Riley Morgan, once underestimated, mocked, and overlooked, had not only survived, but had reshaped the world around her. And for anyone who doubted her, the world would never forget her name. Because she wasn't just the drone girl. She was a leader, a hero, and a force that no one could ignore. And the lesson she left behind was simple: courage, skill, and unwavering determination always win, especially when the world underestimates you the most.